All right, in our latest rental roundtable episode today, we had on Detective Sergeant Dietz, retired. He's been in the police force 37 years, really focused on equipment rental theft, particularly in Michigan the last few years, and talked about a lot of things about how rental companies can be more vigilant to prevent theft. Because once it happens, the equipment's stolen, it's really hard to recover. So talked about getting security cameras installed, license scanning readers, but basic questions on where is this piece of equipment being delivered and looking, is that a real location? Making sure that this person's not from 300 miles away renting a skid steer, things like that. So if you've ever had equipment stolen or you're worried about equipment stolen, this is your episode to listen to. Hope you enjoy. Everyone, we're live. Welcome to the rental roundtable. We've got retired Detective Sergeant Jim Dietz on. Jim, thanks for coming on the show today.
Hey, thank you, Kyle, for inviting me.
We're going to talk about all things rental theft. Fun topic today. I heard you speak, as you know, in Missouri in July at the ARA Missouri show, and there's about an hour presentation on what to do, what not to do around equipment theft. If anyone's in these rental Facebook groups, the ARA group or the rental group, almost every day there's something happening. Someone got something stolen or is attempted, a piece of equipment was almost stolen, and there's a lot going on. And based on me just attending your session in July, I was like, man, this is what the whole rental industry needs to hear. There's some simple things that, as an industry, we can all do to sort of prevent equipment theft, and it's painful, right? When a piece of equipment walks out the door and it's never found again. So, excited for the episode today, Jim, and I think for today, I'd love if you just start off and sort of share your background. You're retired now; you've been retired for the last year, but you spent a lot of time focusing on this particular problem. You have a lot of experience. So tell me about how we got to where we are today.
Hey, Kyle. Yeah, thank you. I've been in law enforcement for 37 years, done a bunch of things. Worked for a sheriff's department for 27 years, and my last 10 years, I was with the Michigan State Police Auto Theft Unit, detective with them. And this is where I got it, was able to really get into the fraudulent rental thefts, from the rental business and stuff. Back in 2018, they had just a large theft ring that started in Michigan, went to quite a few of the surrounding states, the same group. We were able to set up stings and catch them. But it was a big issue that nobody was tackling. Law enforcement thought that, well, this is a civil thing because of the rental contract. Well, then you got fraud involved because you got fake driver's licenses, bad credit cards. So you got a different combination of things going on. And it happened in so many different areas that not all law enforcement knew that this was a group. You have one in one jurisdiction, a theft, I have a theft in another jurisdiction, theft in a different state, and nobody's communicating that the same group is doing all this. So I, I was fortunate enough to take this on and put it all together, and that one group at least was caught. So that's where I started in auto theft. I got involved in this, so it was great. And because of that work a little bit back in 2020, I received the ARA NER award for the work I did on that case. And then my partner and I in 2021 had another large case, and again we received the ARA NER award for that as well. So
Yeah.
during all this investigations, I reached out to all the victims of the rental fraud and found out that there was just all these red flags, and everybody was doing the same thing and missing all these cues and stuff that should have never got past them. So
Mm.
I kind of put it all together, and now I just travel around to the different state ARA groups and stuff, and try to prevent the equipment from being stolen to begin with. Because once it's out the door, it's going to be it's very rare that it's caught again or recovered.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love the message. You were in Missouri. You're going to be in the ARA in New Jersey in
Yes.
December, doing a similar talk. I'm curious. So, you said 37 years in the police force. Is that right? And in the last few years, you've been focused on equipment rental theft. And it sounds like in 2020, you sort of busted a big theft ring. Is that right? In Michigan, and that experience is sort of led you to go, well, there were probably a lot of red flags that should have been caught along the way. I'm glad we got these guys now, but man, if we could have gotten ahead of this stuff 5 years ago, this wouldn't have happened to begin with. Is that right?
That's correct. And Michigan was getting hit extremely hard with the fraudulent theft. So I put a PowerPoint together with what I've learned over my investigations, and I started going to the Michigan state chapter of the ARA
Hmm.
and presenting to them, and found out there was a lot of things going on. I learned a lot from the ARA members themselves. I incorporated that as well. So I try to get it so everybody understands that it's actually a simple process of just vetting your potential customer. I'm not talking about the customer that comes every day. I'm not, you might get your failed to returns and stuff like that, but I'm talking about the customer that is not from the area, not from the state. They travel a large distance to get to your shop and rent something, and nobody's questioning why they've traveled all this way.
Mm. Yeah, well, I want to talk about some of the best practices, some of the things you've learned, but maybe before that, I love a good story. I mean, I'm curious, go back to 2020. You get the call that there's been a lot of theft, and they say, hey, Mr. Dietz, we need you to kind of go solve this. How did you find this ring? How did you actually get these guys?
It was
Because it's hard.
actually it was actually back in 2018 because we're auto theft. There would be a law enforcement agency call and say, "Hey, we had a theft of a skid steer, a rental theft of a skid steer," and well, that really wasn't my what we do at the auto theft. We were auto theft, not equipment theft.
Mhm.
Well, then a couple weeks later, another one would come in a different area, and I look, they called me the same thing. It's like, yeah, not a lot I can do about it. But I kept the reports, and then a third one came in closer to where I actually work, and I started looking at all these, and they all had similarities. They're driving U-Haul rental trucks.
Mhm.
These guys are coming in vest and hard hats. They're using earlier a fake driver's license, stolen credit card numbers. So I
Mhm.
started putting this together, and I went to my boss and said, "Hey," and he goes, "Well, I'll see what you could come up with and stuff." And then in the meantime, I started getting even more. Well, then one of the local rental places that I had, they had great surveillance video, and so I was able to take still shots of that, send it in, and get facial recognition on one of our main guys. And I was able to, through that and other leads, I was able to get an ID on our guy. And he was the same guy that went, I think there was 15 thefts in Michigan at the time, 8 in Ohio, 1 in Indiana.
Mhm.
There was I think it even went down to Kentucky.
Mhm.
So I was able to put all this together, and we did a sting down near Cincinnati with the sheriff's department down there, and actually caught them driving up in a U-Haul box truck, with the fake IDs and credit cards in his pocket, and
Mhm.
the rest is history after that.
Interesting. Well, I'm glad you got him,
Yeah,
and
me too.
he's probably still in jail now, I imagine. What about like are typically I didn't realize the connection with auto theft. Was that the same guy? Was he stealing cars as well? Is that common, or when you look at the people who typically steal equipment, are they usually just focused on equipment theft?
No, they're just focused on equipment theft. They might dabble into a stolen car here and there, but uh, this was this was big money. These guys would steal the equipment, basically steal it
Mm.
fraudulently. Um, and as they're driving down the road, they had already taken pictures of the equipment, and they're already listing it on Marketplace,
Mhm.
and all the other social media, platforms. And they would get these calls, and so they're making, 15. They're asking $15,000 for these equipment, and it's a 50, $60,000 piece of
Yeah.
equipment. So, and they just rented it for $1,000. So
Mm.
they're making big bucks on this stuff.
Yeah, and that's another red flag. Like, why are you selling something for 15 that's worth 50, right? That's
Well, you get people on these platforms and they're going, "Oh, this is a great deal,"
a
and
great deal.
they're not going to say nothing.
Right, I guess so. Did they ever recover the equipment from that group, or is that so far gone it was hard to?
That group, we got, I think, one skid steer and like three trailers.
Yeah,
That's
it's so
all
it's
we
hard. That's part of the
recovered.
lesson here. It's hard to get it back once it walks out the door.
Correct, correct. Yep.
So tell me about some of the best practices, right? So let's go back to 2018, and if we, in hindsight, you could have been in the store and you sort of say, "Hey, there's a guy gonna in the next month is gonna try to try to steal something from you." Like, what are some of the things they could have been doing at that time to prevent some of this from happening?
So a lot of these guys were calling like a day before, using a fake business name. Nobody knew about, that was fake at the time, but they were using a fake business name. Um, uh, their name would be fake, and they give them a telephone number and say, "Hey, do you have this specific piece of equipment?" They say, "Yeah," and they said, "Okay, we'll have somebody there to pick it up, tomorrow." And then they show up at like 4:30 to pick it up.
Hmm.
So there wasn't no questions as to what they were going to use it for, where they're coming from, anything like that. Even a construction site, where are you taking this? Nobody was asking anything on this, and they would just somebody would come there, and of course, I mean, I'm a business, and you're there to make money, so you rent it out, and so they never asked all these questions, to kind of vet their potential customer. And again, I'm not talking about your everyday customer, your locals. I'm talking about these people that are from way out of the area, out of state. Um, they're not even. And then when they do come, and they're coming in with a U-Haul box truck, and nobody's questioning, is this truck even rated to haul your equipment out? So I want people to, when you have somebody call in the day before, uh, ask these questions, get as much information you can, write it down.
Hmm.
Again, you're going to know right away that this is somebody from out of the area. And then if they're going to come the following day, you have a little bit of time to search on the internet, look at the location that said they're going to take it to. Is this an open field? Is it an abandoned
Yeah.
building? Where are they doing this construction at?
Hmm.
Um, so just ask these questions. Who's coming to pick it up? Make sure you tell them that they have a valid license, um, um, and they're going to get the vehicle information. Always get the vehicle information, registration, insurance. It's your equipment. You want to make sure that they're okay to drive it away as well.
Hmm.
So get as much information as you can, and then
I
do
think
your
one of the
research.
Yeah, one of the things I remember from your talk in July was one of the examples, like someone was like the delivery address was like some field and it didn't make any sense, right? But no one thought about it. And I think the other thing you said, like they'll come in at 4:30 because it's the end of the day and you're tired, you're trying to close up and you're rushing out the door. And it's really hard to turn away a paying customer who's going to give you money, right? And
It
then
is. It
take advantage
it
of it.
correct. It is, and they do that, and they'll come in numbers. They'll come in again dressed with their safety vests on, and they try to dress the part. But you can look at the individuals and going, does this make sense? And then they're in there, and they're always talking on the phone because they don't want you as the owner to ask them any questions. They just want you to rush the paperwork through, and so they can just go out the door without you asking, basically anything.
Mm,
So my thing is, if they're going to come in there and do that, and they're acting all busy, like they're important stuff, then put your stuff down, go help another customer out or something, or do something else. And then when they're done talking on the phone and ready to talk to you, then continue with the questioning and
mm.
stuff.
Yeah, that's the other thing you
So
said, Summer. They'll like, hey, I'm on the phone. Can you do this real quick? And it's a way, and that it makes you feel uncomfortable because you don't want to be disrespectful to them, although it is sort of disrespectful to them to come on the phone into your store. But they distract you, right? And it's at the end of the day, and there's a lot of people going on. You're like, hey, can you do this really quick, right? Those things sort of work in their favor. If you do start to feel, if you're a rental company, you start to feel that something's not right, how do you gracefully decline the business? Like how do you actually, because it is a sort of an awkward place to be, right? So how do you actually, if these things start to add up, how do you slow things down to maybe not rush into the rental transaction?
part of the thing I try to tell businesses is to put up a placard somewhere on your wall, either on the front of the desk, on the back of the wall, or at the entrance or something. Really for heavy equipment, um, so that they know that these are. If you're going to rent a piece of heavy equipment, you must possess a valid ID. You must use a credit card. You must have a proper tow vehicle. Um, and then at the bottom there, even I always would put, um, may have put out, you may give a thumbprint.
Mm,
I always put that on there. So, so these people that come in there and you at the counter, even if you got somebody new at the counter, they can say, if they're coming in and renting out a piece of equipment, you can point right to that placard and say, these are the requirements that the owner expects for rental of a piece of
mm,
equipment, piece of heavy equipment. So that
mm.
kind of takes a little bit of pressure off the people behind the counter, that, because some people, specifically the people that are going in there with, and they see that they were going to print, they might say, well, maybe not. Let's walk out of here, and move on. So, but that's just one little thing you can do, just to kind of take a little bit of pressure off yourself, is to put something on the wall to help everybody out. So everybody, including the customer, knows, what they might have to do to rent this out.
Mm. Yeah, it's like, hey, these are the procedures, these are rules, and I just got to follow the rules. And obviously, the repeat customer you see every day, they don't need to go through all that every time, right?
No,
But
no, not at all.
it's a way to back out of a conversation, and it makes it less about, hey, I don't trust you, versus these are the rules, they apply to everyone. So if you don't agree with these rules, that's fine, but we just can't take your business, right? It's a more
Correct.
objective way to handle it.
Yep, yep. So yeah. And then you have the issues with like credit cards and driver's license stuff. So I always tell everybody, when somebody comes in, you're not familiar with them, when you ask for your driver's license, you grab that baby and you hold on to it. Set it on your keyboard, do whatever you want. Do not give that back until either you deny them or the
Mm,
contract is signed.
mm,
And the reason I say that is because obviously I learned that back in 2018, all the way on up, when you got a driver's license, and you hold on to that, and then make them sign the contract too. If it's going to go through, make them sign the contract. Look at the signature on his driver's license and look
mm,
at the signature on the contract. Because I'm telling you right now, when I was working these things, there are two totally different signatures. I mean,
mm.
you can't deny it. They're different, and that should be a red flag. So these guys can't sign, a fraudulent signature.
Yeah, so there's three things you mentioned right there. So the driver's license, the credit card, it's the signature. Uh,
Yes.
so making sure the signature, they make sure they sign it, make sure it matches what's on the license. Are you seeing cases also of fraudulent licenses that are fake IDs effectively? Is that part of the deal here too?
Yes, the fake identifications, you can go on the dark web and you can get anything you want from any state you want. You can put your photo on it. But there's a lot of safety features that every state has
Yeah.
on their driver's license, microprint, the you can illuminate, with the UV light, things will pop up, just all kinds of different things. So, if you got a license, driver's license reader,
Hmm.
you'll catch a lot, compare it. If it's in state, you can compare it to your license and kind of look to see, what the differences may be and stuff. So, yeah, they're good licenses are hard. I mean, even for law enforcement, I just have the opportunity to be able to run it to find out if it's fake or not. So,
And I imagine there's probably a use case for technology here as well on the license side. I know the ARA has a vendor that they're recommending that's new. At Quipli, we actually have a vendor we're integrating with as well. And essentially, there's simple things. It scans the front and the back. It says it's a valid ID. It gives you a score. They can also make them take a selfie. So it says
hmm
this is actually the right person as well. Um, I have to imagine there's some technology like that, either through the ARA or whoever else, that on the license verification, it may not be foolproof, but it's another step that sort of cuts down on some of these things. Is that fair?
The one of the things that I talk about on the backside of every ID driver's license, there's usually like a barcode and a 2D code. Your smartphone has all these barcode reading apps.
Mm,
You know, you scan one of the barcodes on the back and whatever, I mean, that should provide you with all the information that's identical to what's on the front of the license.
mm,
You know, so that's just another way to maybe verify, you know, what's on what's in the barcode and what's on the front of the license. They may be two different things. So that's just one way that you can utilize your smartphone if you don't have
mm.
these, you know, driver's license readers.
Yeah, and there's free tools like that, right? You scan the back, it says Jim Dietz, and the front says Kyle Clements. You go, okay, this is not right, right? And then the guy's
Correct,
name is
right,
someone different. Uh,
right.
there's like, the goal of this is not to be foolproof. There will be theft, but like things like this start to chip away. And even, I imagine if you're a thief and someone's scanning your license or checking stuff, you may just take it back and walk out the store, right? And not come
Oh,
back. And
right, yeah.
it's just like a perception. Like if they're checking things, I see the camera, they got the
Hmm.
fingerprint reader. I'm starting to maybe feel like this is not the place to go steal from. I'm gonna go somewhere a little bit easier, right?
Yeah, right, right. But they are difficult to do, but there's little things you can do. Same with a credit card.
Yeah.
Credit card is the same thing on the dark web. The bad guy will buy a bunch of numbers, basically stolen credit card numbers, but you know, all these batches of numbers. And on the magnetic strip, they can reconfigure the magnetic strip with that stolen number. So when they
Mm,
swipe it, obviously it's going to be a good number. It doesn't belong to them, but it's going to be a good number and it'll probably go through. So I always tell everybody after you swipe it, first of all, don't swipe it and swipe it and swipe it. There was a business back then that swiped it 5 times and asked for a couple other credit cards. This one don't work. This one doesn't work. This one doesn't work. And he finally got one that worked. I'm going, that should be a red flag right there. If you're taking 4 or 5 credit cards from somebody to get one to work, then that should be a red flag. But so don't swipe them. If you got a chip card reader, that's way better than swiping, you know, a magnetic strip. Um, and when the receipt is printed out, look at the last digits on the receipt and compare it to the card because
mm,
those digits, if they retooled their magnetic strip, it may not match the numbers on the front of the card.
mm. Interesting. So they're reconfiguring these credit cards, so with a stolen credit card as well. So it, looks and feels like a certain card, but it's really someone else's. Uh,
Right.
that's interesting. I'm actually interested in that because, like, at some point, if you charge me $500 for the rental and I steal a $50,000 piece of equipment, you can have my $500, right? Uh,
Exactly.
how often is that piece happening? Because I think, the bigger game is the piece of equipment, not the $500. When you're looking at a lot of theft examples, is it typically a stolen credit card or is that less common?
No, the stolen credit card is it was pretty predominant.
Mm,
Um, like you said, it might charge you $500 and they swipe it and it goes through and boom, you're done. Well, so there's a couple issues there. One is that after you swipe a card, you're not going to know that it's stolen until you get your paperwork back from the credit card company saying, you know, this is a bad transaction, and now you have to pay that money back to the credit card company.
mm,
So a couple things in. So if you don't write down the credit card number for law enforcement, and all they have is the last 4 digits on the receipt, so law enforcement is already starting behind the 8 ball. So now I have to do a search warrant to the company, the credit card company, to get the full 16 digits of the credit card, and then I have to do another search warrant to the credit card company to get the fraudulent transactions, you know, for my case. So if you as the owner manager write down the number of the credit card just on a piece of paper, don't store it in a computer or nothing, but write it down, put it in a file somewhere. So you got the full number to give the law enforcement. That would help immensely.
Yeah, and I imagine that's probably challenging, then, right? If you're doing every single transaction, writing down 16, right? Is that something? Are groups actually doing that part of their workflows, or is that something you would just do if something's not feeling right?
If you're not feeling right, I mean, this isn't for your everyday customer. I
Yeah.
mean, you might go years without having anything like this happen, but if you got that one thing that, and there's a couple things going on here, a couple red flags, I don't quite get it. It might be your best interest just to jot it down and actually start a little file with everything.
Mm. Yeah, one of the things we were thinking about talking about is like documenting the rental transaction. So there's a paper trail if something does happen, right? So that's one example is writing the credit card down. What are some other things rental companies should be doing so if theft does happen, they've got some evidence, they've got some material that would help law enforcement?
Yeah, they should be photocopying everything. If you go out there, you should be getting their registration, you should be getting their insurance, photocopy that. If it's a rental contract, because it's a rental vehicle, whether it's a Penske or Hertz or U-Haul, if it's a rental truck or something, first of all, that might be a red flag, just being a rental company. But if you get the rental contract, because 9 times out of 10, the person you're dealing with is not even on that rental contract. Make a
Mm,
copy of that, and then that should help you out as well. If somebody rents it, because they'll do that, they'll get somebody else on the side to rent it for them because they can't, either they don't have a valid license or they're just trying to distance themselves from the crime itself. So somebody will rent them the vehicle that they go and use to the rental company, and their name's not even on the contract. So you might be able to use that as a red flag. Again, it's up to you, but photocopy all that. Um, if you can, take a picture of the license plate, whatever that's there. Photocopy their driver's license front and back. It might look like them, but that picture might be used on 4 other different driver's license out of different states. So that's why we want it photocopied. This might
mm,
be, because there might be a bigger ring.
mm,
So photocopy all that stuff. Surveillance video, I can't stress enough. If you
mm,
got surveillance video or you need to upgrade, please upgrade. Um, Prosecutors now, we're in a digital world. Prosecutors are requesting with any crime now, I want to see digital evidence. If this is on camera, I need to do this for prosecution. All right, so put your cameras in a good place, whether it's over the cash register or the counter that focuses right down on the front of a customer or them coming and going out of the front door. That is a must, and I can't you know express that enough. The prosecutors, I don't care what state you're in, basically if they're not caught on tape, it didn't happen. That's where we're kind
mm.
of headed to. So, plus I was able to get facial recognition because of such good video. So, please grab that too. Know your equipment, know which equipment was stolen. Some of your bigger rental thefts, you have large cache of equipment and trailers. Make sure you know which one you just rented out, because it's difficult for law enforcement that when you report something stolen and then come to find out, oh no, that's here on the lot. We gave you the wrong one, and now we have to go through the computer system and pull out the wrong one and put the new one in. It's uh it's a process.
Yeah, on the camera side, I imagine that's just not a no-brainer that like if you're talking basic things like just no brainers, go ahead and buy like security cameras. And I mean, I have a Ring camera at my house. Could it be as simple as like a Ring camera, or are there certain vendors you'd recommend for that?
No, I don't. Anything's better than nothing. You'd be
Right.
surprised how many people that don't have them. So yeah, that is a must. Whatever you want to put in there, that's fine. Some of obviously the newer equipment is less grainy now, and you got better quality. So most of it is going to be placement of the camera.
Yeah.
You need to get their face. If you got one of the outside where the vehicles are at, you got one people coming and going in and one over the counter, I mean, it's up to you, but we need, something that is tangible. So
Yeah, I mean, three cameras, right? One in the parking lot, one at the main door, one at the main checkout counter. And I have to
sure.
imagine that's going to start making people uncomfortable, right? Sorry, it's going to make the thieves uncomfortable, and they may want to go across the street, right? The normal guys don't get
Correct.
uncomfortable by that.
You're right, right. But I don't know, you can't go anywhere nowadays without being on a camera. So
Yeah, I got the Ring cameras in my house, and so far they've been used to catch me being attacked by a bunch of bees, and also last fall slipping on some leaves and landing on my butt.
yeah, exactly. Oh
So you
yeah,
mentioned
you
some
got to
funny
take it.
things too.
Yeah, you can take it good with the bad. Yeah.
Keep entertained. Ring cameras are, I think they're like $100 each, and you got the video stored, it's HD
Yeah.
quality. That seems like a no-brainer. The other thing that we talked about last week with Warren Clayton when he was on the episode at the end was getting, simple, like little cheap thumbprint readers, right? You get an actual thumbprint for certain rental transactions. Is that something else that you would recommend rental
Yeah,
companies
yeah,
for?
I would highly recommend that. I would take you can get these little round, they're probably about as big as a 50-cent piece, silver dollar.
Yeah.
They're water or they're inkless uh, fingerprint kits. You can get, like six for $10.
Hmm.
Um, so when you have your contract, not only do you make them sign it, but just somewhere on there, make them put a thumbprint on there. And I know people might not be comfortable with that, but you can always give that back at the end. If they come
Yeah.
back and give you the equipment back, you can give that right back to them, and just say, here's where you put your thumbprint on, give that back. Um, but yeah, that might be a deterrent,
Yeah.
to deter these people from doing this. So
It
yeah,
could be something that you opt people out of too, right? If you have your placard that says we're going to do these four things, including a thumbprint, if someone else checks all the boxes and you know them and they say I'm not comfortable, you can obviously make an exception. It's much easier to do that than to say, "Hey, I need your thumbprint." And they're going, "Why am I the only one here getting a thumbprint? Is that a new rule you made up?"
correct, correct, exactly.
I have to imagine these things start to add up just from a psychological perspective. I think thieves go to the easiest place usually. I know the study they did in the New York City metros a long time ago when they took all these old trains and they cleaned up the graffiti and they started enforcing people paying the fare and all these things. All of a sudden, crime plummeted because it was like perceived as like not a rundown place, but like a better quality place that was being taken care of. And I imagine a thief walks into a rental company, they see your camera, they see the license scanning technology, they see your placard, they see you're going to take a thumbprint. These things start to go, you know what? I don't know. I may go to the guy across the street who doesn't have this stuff, right?
Right, right. And obviously back in, 2020 when we have COVID and stuff, people still go around wearing their face mask, their masks
Yeah.
and stuff. Tell them right there at the counter, you need to pull that down so I can see your face. For one, to look at the driver's license compared to, and another to get their face on the video. So that,
Hmm.
I would suggest that as well.
And do you think, I think we were talking earlier, it seems to me the thieves are always trying to get a step ahead, which makes sense what they're trying to do. As soon as we adapt to something, they're figuring out a new way around it. Are the equipment thieves getting smarter? What are some of the new things they're doing that we haven't seen 5 years ago? Like, what are some of the things they're trying to get ahead of the rental companies now?
A couple things. One, they're using instead of themselves coming into the and rent the equipment. So now they're actually picking up homeless people off the street, saying
Mm,
for $300, will you go rent this piece of equipment for me? They have valid driver's licenses, so they'll travel from wherever, halfway across the state. They'll go to these rental places. The homeless person will go inside, and give them their valid license and credit card, and away they go. I mean, so the individual, the criminal, and the homeless person really don't interact other than the money between the two. They don't share phone numbers. They don't talk about whose name each other are. So the criminal distance themselves from not only the theft, but even from the person uh, uh, going in for them.
mm,
They're using a lot of females now. Females are going in. to do this. They're less threatening. You may not ask as many questions, I mean, so there, a lot of females are going in. Another thing is they're catching people. Law enforcement is they monitor Facebook as well, Marketplace and all this. A lot of this stuff is being stolen and sold on Marketplace and some of the other media platforms. So now what they're doing is that the criminal will throw a stock picture of a piece of equipment on there till they have a buyer. And then once they get a buyer, it's like the buyer is placing an order.
Mm,
So the criminal will go in and steal these
hmm
and immediately give them right to the person who bought it. So they don't put it on Marketplace trying to sell it anymore. Now they're just grabbing it and delivering it, you know, um,
mm,
right away. So there's not much transaction of anything.
mm. On the homeless piece, because they walk in, they got a license, and it's the same person. And what can a rental company do to prevent that from happening? That's a little bit more challenging.
What's the question again?
For the homeless people coming in and they've got a real license and they look at it's the same person, right? So it's not a fake
Yeah.
license, et cetera. Like, how do you prevent that example from coming? Is it just asking the right questions and making sure things add up? Because that one's a little bit more challenging, I imagine, for a rental company to deal with.
That is a little more challenge, but again, if you're vetting this
Yeah.
person, looking, okay, and I'll use Michigan as an example. If you're on the west side of state and somebody from the east side of state, say Detroit, comes over here with a homeless person, first of all, they travel all this way. I mean,
Yeah.
200 miles to get a piece of equipment. That should be a red flag all by itself. Another one is vet, ask questions. What's the property or the equipment going to be used for? What's the location you're taking it? These people aren't going to know any of this.
Mm,
So ask, ask, ask. And the one out of all this, the one thing I would say that the most important thing is once you get a location from whatever who's ever renting, do a quick search on it, Google Maps or whatever. Do
mhm,
a search on that location. Because I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a fraudulent location.
mm.
And because you don't do your homework to see where it's going. Um, and back in 18 and even up to today, if you don't look at the location, that, you're missing out on a lot. You're missing
Mm.
out. So, because
That's a great piece of
that,
advice right there.
yeah, that's one of the biggest red flags I found is the location is not correct. And then only after it's rented do they realize, man, something isn't right. Either they drive out to the location, they Google it or do whatever and realize, oh dang, so now they're calling law enforcement and that's, so but if you would have just checked that one little thing, that would have made a big difference.
I imagine, are there any cases of deliveries theft? I imagine it's like someone walks in the store, it's a pickup most of the time. They load it in a U-Haul. Are there examples of, is it common for people to have the piece of equipment delivered on a job site? I mean, for the example reason you just said, I maybe imagine no, but I'm just curious, are there ever examples of deliveries happening that result in theft?
Uh, yes, they do that. That's not as frequent
Yeah.
as the straight up rental thefts, but I know, and I try to tell companies too that they should themselves, all right, I'll deliver it to the job site. You just
Yep.
tell me when you want it there. But the issue is they meet somebody at the job site and drop it off.
Mm,
They don't know who they're dropping it off to because again, they didn't ask for their license,
mhm.
so they have no clue who's taking it, who's taking possession of it, and then obviously they just got burned on that one too.
Yeah, so that does happen, but more common is to pick up in person. I mean, it requires more patience to do the transaction, say, "Hey, deliver tomorrow," et cetera. They want it at that moment.
Right.
And I like the idea of just searching for, "Hey, what's the delivery address?" Okay, great. And what are you doing here? And what is this around? And they'll go, "I don't," you know what I mean? Like they should know where it is. What are the cross streets? What's nearby? If they don't know those things off the top of their head, that's
Yeah,
probably a pretty red flag.
that's huge. Always ask what they're doing for. I mean, just one example that I had was a guy traveled 200 miles to rent a skid steer to install a hot tub. That was it. And then,
Must have been a pretty nice hot tub to drive that
yeah,
far.
no doubt, no doubt. But it was at an apartment complex that, don't even have hot tubs.
Mm,
Um, so but again, just ask questions because, they're going to try to snowball you
yeah.
and make it sound like they know what they're talking about. But the more questions you ask, either the more nervous they're going to get, or they're just going to turn around and walk out.
Yeah, and they're on the phones. Hey, I can't talk because I'm busy. Can you just do this fast? Are
Yeah.
most of the time though they're out of town people though, it sounds like? Like, are there examples of someone who's actually like, I live 5 miles from here, or is that less common?
No, some of that will be more of a failed to return. Well, I got busy. I couldn't return on the day I needed
Yeah.
to and
Okay.
stuff like that. But the fraudulent stuff are going to be people that are not from the area, not from the state. So that should be your first red flag right off the bat. Rental vehicles,
Yeah.
just things like that.
So 80/20 rule, like what's the simple things to focus on to drive the most value? It's people who are out of state, they got a rental vehicle, they're busy, the license and credit card signature doesn't match, the
Right.
delivery address is doesn't make any sense, and they don't know where it is. Like those things alone start to cut down on a lot of these, it sounds like.
Right. Yep. And even when you ask the people that are there for their telephone number, get their telephone number. You don't care about the person that called it in. First of all, you
Mm.
should already documented that. But when these people are there, ask them for their contact number. And if they don't have one, that should be a red flag. If they do have one, they give it to you. I'd sit right there and call it. See if his phone rings.
Yeah, and there's like there's part of the license scanning vendors that ARA and that we're looking at. There's also things that like you can send a text automatically and they have to enter the code on their phone. And
Yeah. Yes.
and it's just like, look, it's part of the workflow. It's part of our shot sign here. It's part of our process. It's like those things, oh, you don't have your phone, you gave me the wrong number. Pretty quickly they're gonna be, hey, I gotta run.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And I obviously like technology. One of the things we hear about a lot is also the GPS and tracker side of things. Like,
Yep.
what would you recommend for GPS, telematics, trackers? What are some things rental companies should be thinking about if it does get stolen and there's ways to maybe find the location? What are some things rental companies can think about on that front?
All right. Telematics is obviously going to be your best. It comes built into the equipment for maintenance purposes and stuff, and it has GPS right on it. That's going to be your best. Obviously, a lot of new machinery will have that. Outside of that, there's all kinds of companies out there with GPS. I know NER has hooked up with a large company now for GPS. Um, but there's a bunch of different things. Something is better than nothing. Apple AirTags. I know a lot of people are using those.
Hmm.
Uh, they work, but they can be found because
Right.
within 24 hours, if you got a smartphone, either an Android or even an iPhone, it's gonna detect that Apple AirTag. Um, so um, yeah, they're good. Like I said, something
Yeah.
is better
Better,
than
better than
nothing.
nothing. What I've heard on the
Yeah.
Apple AirTags, I actually I borrowed my friend's car and I had his keys with me and I got a notification like there's an AirTag with you. And I was like, oh, I got
Mm-hmm.
my friend's keys. Let me go. But I'm like, if you're a criminal, right? All of a sudden you've been notified, you're taking that thing off and throwing it, right?
Oh,
So it's
exactly.
better than nothing, but it does alert the user that it's with you, which is the counterproductive here. Um, I know there's other trackers, and I've heard some people will have like a easily seen one, and then they'll have like a decoy, and they'll have two.
Yes.
Have one that's like buried somewhere else. I've heard that as well. I know there's a lot of vendors out there. One I've heard recently that Warren Clayton uses for the guy from 2 weeks ago, Happen, and I guess they have like a ghost tracker mode where you could uh, they disconnect it from the equipment, but it's still tracking silently. There's things like
Mm-hmm.
that can sort of help a little bit, but if they're thorough enough, they'll find the tracker. So there's different things, I guess, right? You can have two, you could have a decoy, et cetera. It's better than nothing, and maybe it tracks far enough that you get to the location and maybe they've realized it, but you now have some evidence, right? So it sounds like you'd recommend something's better than nothing on the tracking side, but that's later downstream. The better thing to do is prevent it from happening in the first place.
Exactly. Once it goes out your door, whether you have a tracker on or not, it's going to be impossible to recover. Eventually, they're going to find the trackers on them, or they're going to go dead, or other than telematics. But
Yeah.
yeah, so something is better than nothing.
And last topic I want to talk about was collaboration with law enforcement. You've been your entire career in law enforcement. So we do all these things and we have the trackers, they pull the tracker out, they figure out how to steal something anyways. You notice that it's stolen for the first time. What do you do and how can rental companies collaborate with law enforcement to better recover these things and maybe prevent other rental companies from being attacked as well?
That's that's kind of difficult depending on where you live. Obviously, if you're in a smaller village where you might have a one or two man department versus a township or a city where
Mm.
you could be from 10 officers to, a couple thousand officers, counties, sheriff's department, state agencies. Depending on who's in your area, it's tough. It's tough. You need to reach out um, to whoever. Chances are you're going to get a patrol officer to come take your initial report. Some of the bigger cities, once a patrol officer takes it, they'll pass it on to a detective bureau, or if they're big enough, they may have a specialized unit as an auto theft unit or some kind of property crimes unit or whatever that would investigate that. Um, but you need to know what's going on in the area, need to know what's going on in the rental theft, arena, um, these criminals, because the issue is with law enforcement, they're going to go to your jurisdiction and hit one place.
Mm.
Then they're going to go into another jurisdiction and hit another place. Well, obviously the law enforcement, they only think they have one issue going on and that's it. No matter where they go, until somebody actually can kind of look at the big picture and has access to all these reports, to put something together and say, oh man, this is the same guy's hit, 15 different places. Um, but the patrol officer, he only thinks there's one issue going on, and that's his rental store. That's it.
Mm.
Law enforcement prioritize everything that they do. So you're sorry, but a rental theft may not, if they got some domestics going on and some salts, they have to prioritize what they take, how they take it, and then the emergency calls in between. So, you being a victim, yes, you've been victimized. You deserve, prosecution just like everybody else does. It just sometimes it takes a little longer. That's why you should have everything photocopied, do everything you can on your end so
Mm.
they, as law enforcement, has a nice little neat package to work with. And that includes if your state requires a letter of demand, please do that. I can tell you, I recently went to a place in Texas, company. I was talking to a rental place, and they had an Apple AirTag on their equipment. It was fraudulently stolen. They started watching it go across the state, so they called the counties that they were going through, and the sheriff department there said, nope, it's not in our system as stolen, so we can't do anything. The originating agency that took the complaint originally said, well, we can't enter it as stolen because you need that letter of demand first. Well, all that takes time when you have to do a certified mail to send that out, get it back. Your piece is going to be long gone by then. So there are issues with law enforcement that we're trying to work with as well, and so everybody's kind of on the same page. But again, they have to prioritize what they do.
Yeah,
So
I think it's interesting what you're saying around they'll go from jurisdiction to jurisdiction because they know how fragmented the country is with different jurisdictions and police forces and cities and townships and states, and
you bet.
it's complicated, right? And they know that. Is that part of why they travel so far because they want to just hit one store in each jurisdiction because it's harder for law enforcement to piece together the full puzzle because it's across multiple cities, multiple states? Is that part of why they do that?
Oh, you bet, you bet. You know, you're not going to keep hitting the same places in your area. You know, you're
Mm,
bound to get caught or somebody's going to know you. So yeah, they travel all over. Just, you know, I'm a stranger coming into a town. Nobody knows me,
yeah.
you know, and chances are I'm going out. Maybe it's more rural than it is, you know, urban. And it's like, okay, I can get one over on these guys. They're not going to ask nothing. You know, they just want to make a sale or, you know, make some money and stuff. So yeah, so don't think that it can't happen to you because it happens all the time.
Yeah. It does happen. I think I told you last week, I talked to a group in Georgia, and the owner got it stolen from him. And he hasn't, he was like, we're training our staff. We got to be vigilant. And he got duped.
Yes. Yeah. No
And
matter what you do, sometimes, I mean, it can still happen. I don't care.
yeah.
You can do everything right to a T, it'll still happen. One thing I do want to bring up though is um, rental theft companies need to communicate with each other.
Hmm.
So if somebody comes to my store and I see all these red flags and I turn them down, deny them a rental, contact your local the other ones in your area. Let them know, hey, I just turned somebody away. Yeah, they're your competitor, but
Hmm.
you know what? You would want the same from them if they turned them away. Because I'm telling you, and it happened many times. They would leave one place that turned them down. They'll go right down the road, and you know, and these guys will rent to them. So you need to communicate with each other. That's going to be your biggest, you know, one of the biggest things to deter these people is, you know, I had one over by the Thumb part of Michigan call me and say, "Hey, this guy's in a rental. He's here to rent something," and he sent me everything text. The owner, you know, the owner did. So um, so then, you know, 200 miles away, this same guy tried to do the same exact kind of theft at a different company. Well, that person called me too. I mean, I had a fairly good relationship with everybody in Michigan, so they would call me doing the same thing, and we ended up setting up a sting and catching that guy as well. So talk to each other, you know, let each other know what's going on, what they're driving, what kind of story they had to attempt to, because they're going to stick with the same story.
Right.
So pass that on to your fellow, you know, branches.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing more of that. I know there's rental owners, and there's one group I know that's got 50 owners in it, and they'll text, hey, there's potential theft in Louisiana, right? So then that guy lets the people know in Louisiana, and it's old school text message thread. The Facebook groups I mentioned. It feels like every day almost. I mean, maybe it's not, maybe it's the algorithm, but every week at least. Uh, hey, this is the guy. This is what he looks like. I got the Ring camera picture of him. He hit our store. Here's a story. Just be vigilant.
Yep.
Those things matter. We can talk about all the trackers and technology, but a lot of it's just communicating. And as you said, they'll same story, same people. They'll just go different parts of the state, right? So a lot of it's just proactively communicating things. And it seems to me, I don't. And that's the question I asked like earlier. Like, do you think theft has increased lately? And maybe it hasn't increased, but maybe it's just that people are more vigilant and more proactive around it. And maybe you can answer that. Do you think theft has increased, or do you think that just the awareness of it has increased?
I think a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Definitely the awareness. However, it's still happening. So, yep, people are aware that it's going on, but um, we're making the same mistakes as of not vetting people. And it's, I don't want to say it's being allowed to happen, you know, but it's, you know, business owners and staff need to just take time, a little bit of time, and ask questions. This isn't for everybody that comes in, but you know, if somebody's out of the area, out of state, just ask a couple more questions. That's all I'm, you know, telling you to do. Just ask a couple key questions.
Mm.
So
Common sense.
yes, yes.
I guess final, we're just out of time here, but final piece of advice you'd give for a rental company, in particular, a rental company that's goes, I've never had anything stolen before. I don't really need to worry about this. What advice would you have for a group like that?
Be vigilant. You know, ask the questions. Educate your staff. Let them know there's thefts going on. Um, Another thing I need to mention real quick. I don't know how many people are part uh, of the National Equipment Registry (NER). NER puts out alerts all the time of these fraudsters going from state to state or area to area. You know, you can put these alerts. They make them really nice. They show you pictures. They explain. You can hang it on the wall so everybody and their brother can see. You know, behind the counter. And that might deter the person coming in. Oh man, they got my picture up there. So you get these alerts, communicate with each other, pass information on to each other. Um, and then again, do the same things with your staff. Let them know of the importance of, you know, even if you put some key questions on a piece of paper and put it under the glass you have on your counter so they can look at it to read off the, you know, ask these questions. You know, the placard on the wall, so your staff can say, hey, you got to meet these requirements or we're not going to sell to you. And talk about it. Give your staff an out. Say, you know, let them know that, man, something don't feel right. I'll be right back. I got to go ask my boss or something. You
Mhm.
know, so give them an out so they can come get you, you know, to help, you know, you know, do the, whether you can sell or rent to them or not. So, but communication is huge, whether it's just between you and your staff, between you and other agencies and other law enforcement. You know, if you got a lot of equipment, you know what, invite your law enforcement there. Hey, you guys want to look at some equipment to find numbers and stuff on here? And, you know, kind of you give them coffee and donuts, you know, and so come
Mhm.
on down here, you know, or we're going to open up our shop to your investigators to look at this stuff. So they get more familiar with it.
I like it. Be vigilant and also get the Ring cameras because I also want to see some videos of people like walking in the glass doors and more cameras, more events like that are recorded.
Oh,
And
exactly. I
we should
got all
we
kinds of video to show you, but yes.
That's right. Well, I appreciate you coming on, Sergeant Dietz. You're fighting the good fight. A lot of the folks who listen to this are ARA members, so you've been doing your tours. You've been in Missouri. You're going to be in New Jersey next month. I'm sure you got some others lined up as well. So hopefully, folks get the opportunity to hear your presentation live at some point. And I appreciate everything you're doing for the industry.
Hey, Kyle, appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Thanks, everyone. See you guys.